歡迎大家出席今日嘅
Welcome to the press briefing. With us today are Dr. Chang Shuk-Kwan, Head of Communicable Disease Branch of the Center for Health Protection, and Dr. Larry Lee, Chief Manager, Hospital Authority. They will brief us on the cases and the situation at the HA respectively. Dr. Chang. Good afternoon. Yesterday, we had a total of 3,313 locally acquired cases, including 1,313 positive PCR cases and 2,000 positive RAT results verified by PCR tests. We had 173 imported cases, including 161 PCR positive results and 12 positive RAT results. Today, the HA reported 4 fatalities. Since the 5th wave started, the total death toll is 9,224. I would now invite Dr. Lee to brief us on the situation at the hospitals. A total of 1,122 patients were in hospital. 126 were newly infected cases. Of the hospitalized patients, 333 were staying in isolation beds. 22 were in Tier 2 beds, 381 were staying in the North Lantau Hospital Hong Kong Infection Control Center, 106 were new cases. Yesterday, 4 newly reported patients were in critical condition and 2 were in serious condition. Of the patients in hospital, 20 were in critical condition and 28 in serious condition. 5 in critical condition were staying in intensive care. There were 4 new fatalities reported. All 4 female patients passed away yesterday. They were aged 71 to 94. 2 of them stayed in residential care homes, and 1 of them received 3 doses of a vaccine, and the remaining 3 received 2 doses. For the 94-year-old female patient who received 2 doses of a vaccine, she had hypertension, cardiac failure, and other cardiac diseases. She stayed in an RCHE. On July the 1st, at the Asia World Expo Quarantine Center, she tested positive to COVID, and she also had fever and coughing. She was transferred to the A&E ward of North Lantau Hospital, and she was found to have pneumonia. She was subsequently sent to the North Lantau Hospital Hong Kong Infection Control Center. Her conditions continued to deteriorate, and she passed away on July the 16th. The second patient was a 71-year-old female patient who received 2 doses of a vaccine. She stayed in an RCHE. She had hypertension, diabetes, and lung cancer, and she had to receive oxygen, and she was admitted to the psychiatric ward in Kowloon Hospital, and she had cardio arrhythmia, and her oxygen level continued to decline, and she was transferred to the Prince of Wales Hospital, and on the 8th she was transferred to the Hong Kong Buddhist Hospital, and she tested positive to COVID later, and on July the 13th her CT value was 23.8. We prescribed an antiviral to the patient, but her conditions continued to deteriorate, and she passed away on the 16th. The third patient was a 91-year-old female who received 3 doses of a jab. She had hypertension, renal diseases, and psychiatric conditions, and on July the 15th, she was admitted to the A&E ward of Caritas Medical Center. She had shortness of breath, fever, and she was somewhat unconscious. She did not have pneumonia according to an X-ray scan. Her RAT and PCR results were positive. CT value was 16.3. She was admitted to a medicine ward, and she passed away on the 16th of July. The final patient was an 86-year-old female who received 2 doses. She had hypertension, and she was found to be unconscious, and she was admitted to a hospital in the morning on the 16th, and her heart stopped beating and resuscitation was not successful. Subsequently, she tested positive to COVID via RAT, and she passed away the same morning. Over to Dr. Chuang, please. We had 173 imported cases, of which 68 tested positive at the hospital, another 69 tested positive at quarantine hotels, another 36 tested positive after leaving the quarantine hotels. These arrivals arrived from 41 cases. 3 of the places of origin had more than 3 cases, including 45 from the UK, 17 from the US, 14 from Thailand. For the remaining 38 countries, there were less than 10 cases of residential care homes. 4 residential care homes for the elderly and 1 residential care home for the disabled had new cases today, and close contacts had to be quarantined. These include 4 RCHEs, Hong Kong Lutheran Wong Chen Lam elderly care home. 2 residents in the same room tested positive. For the remaining 8 residents, they had to be quarantined. 1 Hogan elderly home, 1 resident tested positive. 16 residents and 1 staff member had to be quarantined. Yan Oi elderly care home, 1 resident tested positive. Another resident had to be quarantined. Helping Hands Wei Feng Foundation Lok Fu Care Home, 1 resident tested positive, 4 other residents had to be quarantined. The LCHD was the Christian Family Center elderly home. 1 resident tested positive, 6 others had to be quarantined. Yesterday, I mistakenly gave the name of a school. It should be the Morning Light School. 1 student tested positive. A number of other students from the same class had to be quarantined. Since I made that mistake yesterday, I apologize for any inconvenience caused to members of that school. Today, certain classes from 2 schools had to suspend, including the Buddhist Wong Chak Ngam Primary School. 2 students from Class 2B tested positive. There were 5 students in that class, so the class had to be suspended for a week. St. Stephen's Affiliated Primary School, Class 4D, there were 33 students and 4 tested positive. The class must be suspended for a week. In terms of the variant strains, we continue to see a large number of cases today. For suspected BA.2.12.1 cases, there were 43 suspected cases, 28 were untraceable, 8 were related to prior cases. For BA.4 and .5, there were 41 suspected cases, of which 10 were related to other cases, and 31 were untraceable so far. That's all for my report today.
For the hospital authority, over the past day, there were 108 patients who have recovered, 101 have been discharged. 2 patients were found COVID positive through admission screening. 3 patients in the same ward or HA workers were listed as close contacts. For HA workers, 40 workers have been infected. Altogether, 25,121 workers have been infected. 6 workers have returned to work. Altogether, 24,653 HA workers have returned to work. Now, some incidents to announce here. In the Northern Hospital, in the medical ward, male ward, a male in his 70s got confirmed on July 15th. The hospital commenced contact tracing. 4 patients and 3 HA workers were infected. The hospital is investigating the links between the cases. 5 patients are under isolation. An 82-year-old male is in a poor condition due to his existing conditions. The other patients are in a stable condition. The workers are also in a stable condition. The ward has suspended admission and visiting arrangements. Cleaning and disinfection have been conducted. The hospital will continue to monitor the health condition of the workers. At the Hong Kong Buddhist Hospital, At the palliative care ward, a 91-year-old female patient got infected. The patient is currently in a stable condition and under isolation. There are 10 patients and 5 workers in the same ward. The disinfection has been performed, and we will continue to monitor the health condition of the workers and the patients at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in the orthopedic ward. 2 nurses got infected. 1 patient care assistant got infected. Altogether, 6 patients and 3 workers have been infected. That's all from me for today. The floor is now open to questions. Please put up your hand. Our staff will pass you the microphone. Before putting your questions, please identify your media outlet. The journalist, the lady at the back. I'm from Now TV. This morning, there was media reports that 2 mainland drugs are in use at hospitals without going through registration. Are these 2 drugs registered? Which hospitals have prescribed the drugs? Will these drugs be registered subsequently? And for COVID in the city, over the past few days, we've seen more than 3,000 cases every day. Where do you think COVID is going in terms of a daily case count? Some schools have seen outbreaks. When more than 5% of the students at the school get infected, there will be a suspension for the whole school. We still need to revise this arrangement. Some experts argued for relaxing social distancing measures and achieve a hybrid immunity in the community. What's your take on this? I'll first address a point about the drugs. The 2 drugs. They're used through a different channel. During the 5th wave, things were tough. We needed fever relief drugs with paracetamol, and given the emergency, we procured relevant drugs through government recognized channels. And recently, there is this particular drug that is an antibiotic through injection. We go through the relevant legislation, Cap 138A. Registered physicians imported drugs for patients. We have applied for the import permit through the Department of Health. In importing these drugs manufactured in mainland, we have followed the relevant laws in Hong Kong. As for the position of COVID daily case count, you see the daily case count going up slowly. In roughly 2 weeks, the daily case count will double. Now, the R, that is the real-time reproduction rate, monitored by the HKU, is at roughly 1.7, which is on the high side, and it's still going up. We are worried that this may have an impact, that is, create pressure on the healthcare system. As for schools, the cases reported at schools is similar to the cases reported in the community as a whole, so there is no obvious signs that there are outbreaks at schools. Teachers and students have to do daily rapid antigen tests. This arrangement may help prevent large-scale transmissions at schools. What we're seeing now is small-scale transmissions involving maybe 2 or 3 students each class. And in some cases, we recommend class suspension, but we do not see subsequent major outbreaks at those schools. Next question, the lady over there.
From SCMP News, few English questions. The first question is regarding the wristbands. So far, not every patient infected with COVID has received their wristbands for home isolation. Supposedly, are patients supposed to receive their wristbands on the first day they are infected? If not, how long are they expected to wait to receive the wristbands? My second question is on the government's vaccine committee likely to approve COVID jabs for infants aged 3 years old and below. Are there any concern on children being too young to get vaccinated? And what are the things that parents should know about these risks ahead? And my third question is on daily rat tests for schools. Some industry professionals say that students shouldn't need to do the daily rat test as daily anymore. So do authorities see the need to modify the policy? Thank you.
We'll pass for the wristband. Center for Health Protection will pass those with confirmed cases who have filled up the online platform to OGCIO as soon as possible. And I understand OGCIO, after receiving our referral, they will arrange to distribute the wristband as soon as possible to those who require it. And for the coming Joint Scientific Committee on Vaccine Preventable and Emerging Zoonotic Disease, and also the expert advisory panel, whether to use, the use of vaccine, COVID vaccine in children under 3 is one of the agenda items. So I do not have details because the vaccine is still, the meeting is still being arranged. And for the daily rapid tests, I think this is a good way to screen out those test positive cases, whether it's student or staff of the school, from mixing together with other students in the school to prevent major outbreaks in the schools. So at the present moment, we only observe a few clusters of cases among individual classes in some of the schools, around a few a day. So I think this is an effective measure to prevent major outbreaks in the schools, and it should be maintained in the meantime.
Hi.
Next question. The lady over here. I'm from cable TV. Now, for the 2 drugs procured from the mainland, how many patients have been prescribed the drugs? What kinds of patients have received these drugs? Now, given the rise in the daily caseload, will there be an increase in the purchase of such drugs? Will the existing drugs be used, or will more drugs be procured from the mainland? Under what circumstances will there be a need to purchase these 2 drugs? Will the mainland manufactured drugs be used comprehensively, or will the old drugs be procured? And for the rapid antigen tests, some experts recommend that the students and teachers can drop the rapid antigen test, but is there a need to keep them? In terms of the drugs, this is about fever relief drugs containing paracetamol. During the 5th wave, things were tough. In difficult times, we go through this channel to procure the drugs. Now, we don't have figures on the kind of patients who have received the drugs. Now, as for the particular drug I mentioned just then, cefoxitia sodium for injection. And we don't have figures on the patients who have used these drugs. But this practice has been around for some time. We use the drugs on specific patients. We go by the established procedure to apply for the import permit for the drugs. So the practice is different for the 2 kinds of drugs.
如果你提返個撲熱息痛
For paracetamol, if the supply of drugs stabilize, well, we might not import the drug. For the other drug, it has been in use for some time. Teachers and students in schools must do RETs every day. And in recent times, we observed the presence of gatherings taking place in the schools. If we saw more than 3 positive cases among students in the same class, we would recommend suspension of class for a week. But given the lack of major outbreaks so far, the other students in the schools can continue to go to class. The RETs can effectively prevent or curb the mass outbreaks of COVID in schools? Next question, please. The lady at the back, please. Good afternoon, this is TVB. We saw a number of students returning to Hong Kong, and the number of arrivals in Hong Kong went up sharply, and many people were waiting for RATs, and some of them were waiting to be transferred to quarantine hotels, and the coaches would stop by different quarantine hotels to drop off passengers or arrivals. Would the government look to streamline the relevant procedures to minimize the risk resulted? In terms of the quarantine and testing arrangements, they are constantly being refined by the government. And I believe the authorities would continue to streamline such procedures. Next question, please. This is AM 730. I have a question for the HA. For the 71-year-old fatality who stayed at Hong Kong Buddhist Hospital, was the case related to prior clusters? For the 3 HA staff members, which positions did they serve? And can you tell us about the cause of transmission? In terms of RATs for schools, when would the daily testing requirement be dropped? As for the cases from residential care homes that were not reported or misreported, would you say this is a common occurrence? For the BA.2.12.2 and BA.4 and .5 cases, were the changes in the daily numbers significant in terms of the overall figures? The RAT testing requirement will remain for now to ensure the well-being of students and teachers. The reason is that a large number of positive cases within a school may lead to a massive outbreak. For residential care homes, some positive results might have been missed, but as a whole, we wouldn't say that this is very common. As for the variants of BA.2.12.1 and BA.4 and .5, the overall percentage is less than 1%. The majority of cases were BA.2.2, and in other countries, in some other countries, BA.4 and .5 became the dominant strain. So we will continue to monitor the situation in Hong Kong. You asked about the 2 relevant hospitals. For the new 91-year-old patient at the palliative care ward of Hong Kong Buddhist Hospital, the patient stayed in the same ward. And for that particular ward, 10 patients and 5 staff members tested positive so far. For Queen Elizabeth Hospital, there were 6 patients and 3 staff members who tested positive. These included 2 nursing students. The outbreak started in Ward A3, which was an orthopedic ward. A 98-year-old patient tested positive on the 14th of July, and upon contact tracing, we found that 3 other patients tested positive. Our infection control unit are monitoring the situation, and we have thoroughly disinfected the relevant ward. We saw many new cases in the community in recent days. That is why staff testing has been reinforced, and starting from next Monday, staff members who take care of high-risk patients must do 2 extra tests per week. As for nursing students, the requirement is the same. They must do an RAT every day. The speaker is not coming through the microphone. They went to the same ward at Hong Kong Buddhist Hospital. Were you referring to the 70-year-old patient at North District Hospital? I do not have any information. Final question, the gentleman on this side. Good afternoon, this is Ming Pao. 4 residential care homes were not reported yesterday, and when did you find out that the positive cases were not reported, and did any outbreaks occur in the meantime? In recent days, we saw outbreaks in residential care homes. Do you expect these clusters? Do you expect more of such clusters in the coming days? I do not know about the situation with the SWD. As for the hospital authority, the current situation at hospitals actually reflect the trend in our community. And in light of this, the HA has reinforced testing requirements for our staff. For staff members subject to higher risk due to exposure to certain patients, such as those who need to conduct dialysis for the patients or take care of cancer patients, they need to do 2 extra tests per week. The total number of staff who tested positive is now 25,131, which was up 40 from yesterday. This is the end of the press briefing. Thank you.